This is Keys to the Shop, episode 485. Your shop versus the industry. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFerio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm excited to have you here with me. This is a show that's been running for 7 years now. We've got many episodes that you can explore at keystotheshop.com. Better yet, you could subscribe to Keys to the Shop. You just hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player. You can also subscribe on YouTube, where we do lots of video interviews with our special guests on the show in our main episodes. That's just at Keys to the Shop on YouTube. So hit subscribe there and also get the notification bell clicked and you'll be set to go. Thanks so much. And one thing I want to make you aware of is that not only does Keys to the Shop do a podcast, but, and this is where I spend a lot of my time. In fact, these days, most of my time is spent in coaching and consultation with coffee shop owners like yourself who are looking to improve their cafes, improve culture, quality, improve the operations of their bar. And I go around and I will do cafe assessments and then follow-up coaching. We just do straight coaching, and also lots of different focused projects on helping you with specific issues that you want some insight on. The whole mission of Keys to the Shop as a consulting company is to assist you in reaching your potential as a business and as an owner, help you find joy in the process of making coffee with people, to help you take care of your team and yourself. So the main driving force of Keys to the Shop consulting is to give you clarity and tools and foundational wisdom to get you from where you are now to the next natural level of your cafe. And if you want to work with me one-on-one, just email chris@keystotheshop.com. And also, if you're interested in being part of our keyholder coaching groups launching again in September, a mastermind group of coffee shop owners. This is a paid mastermind group. There's an application we're going to be putting out very soon. But to be considered early, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. These are super powerful sessions, take place over the course of 6 months, and the support in the community is just unparalleled. It's great. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Ground Control, and Ground Control has been leveling up our expectations of specialty coffee since they came onto the scene many years ago with the Cyclops brewer. All these years later, they have a new brewer. It's smaller than the Cyclops, but it has 30% higher output of batch espresso and batch cold brew capabilities. It not only makes game-changing batch brew coffee, but because of their SCA award-winning technology, you can make cold brew, you can make batch diced lattes. So go to groundcontrol.coffee to learn more and check this machine out if you're interested in an upgrade in quality, as well as opening up new avenues of profitability for your store. Ground Control might be the right brewer for you. Again, go to groundcontrol.coffee. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Barista Series from Pacific. They have been the foundation of the plant-based beverage movement in specialty coffee, and that is because the Barista Series is made for baristas. It is tested by baristas and launched and iterated upon based on the feedback of the community. That's why it stands up to the heat from steaming. It produces amazing texture for latte art, as well as keeping the balance of the flavor in the beverage focused on coffee. Go to pacificfoodservice.com. You can get samples there. Try it for yourself. I really do think you're going to be impressed. And if you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, go ahead and check out the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everyone. Well, today we are going to talk a little bit about you and your place in this wide world of coffee versus the industry. We all can use air quotes when we're talking about the industry. Today's episode really has been a thought that I have spoken on many times, and you'll find in the recommended episodes for this episode, you'll see the things like comparison. There's a shift break episode we did on comparison, death by comparison. And the other episode would be you are not your competition, or actually, I think it was your peers are not your customers. that kind of a thing. And for me, I've been in the industry now for 26 years. And in all those years, the litmus test for whether or not I was in line with where I thought I needed to be in the industry was to compare myself with other people and to say, well, am I doing that? Am I a competition barista? Am I brewing my coffee with this or that? Do I have a palate that's developed to appreciate the coffees that are being talked most about right now? Or do I feel like I can't talk about the coffees that I like because that's not what's trending at the moment? So there is that comparison where I'm searching for validation as a professional first, and then I can sort of compromise my values or the truth of what I prefer in order to get the feeling of belonging to something that I find valuable. So I want to actually question for us collectively the value in finding belonging in something as large and amorphous as the industry. Long story short, the industry is you. You are the industry. The many cafes and roasteries and coffee businesses all throughout the value chain of coffee make up what we know as the industry. And when we want to educate ourselves on how to become better as a coffee professional, one of the things we tend to do is look at data and trends and the bigger picture of what the industry is doing, not realizing that all of the things you see happening right now have been cooking for quite a while. Many, many years, decades even, of ground being tilled up and fertilized and planted and cultivated and grown. And what we don't see behind the scenes are operators who are simply working their own businesses faithfully and paying attention to their own people, as in their staff, their customers, and their community. And in the end, that creates some kind of a trend or a data point, right? And we then say, well, I want to mitigate risk in operating my business, so I'm going to take a cue from where the trend is right now. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We're not often a big enough student of our own businesses. We like to pay attention to everybody else's. It's often a mistake because we then forget who we're serving. We pretend as though our coffee bar needs to be similar to in feel and in style, content and product, the ones that have inspired us, without taking into account how to contextualize or even get down to the bottom of why we feel inspired. We simply, and irresponsibly in some cases, slap on like a veneer that inspiration without more consideration. So that's what we're wanting to dive into a little bit more today, which is how do you take what you see happening in the industry and then apply it contextually to your community and your coffee shop that is either yet to be open or is currently open. I've always thought of the industry, well, okay, that's wrong. I haven't always thought of it, but in many years in recent memory, I've thought of the industry as a pantry. The industry is a place that contains a lot of stuff, a lot of ingredients, not all of which go together. It is the availability of this information through the internet and social media, and that creates more accessibility for operators than there ever has been. It's far easier to open a coffee shop these days because the information about small business, the information about workflow and menu development and taxes and management, leadership, and etc., coffee brewing is there for the taking. And with all this information available to us, we feel it's necessary to almost cram as much of it into our concepts as possible. We don't have as strong of a no as we do a yes or maybe, and we'll see, and we'll try that out. And we end up with a lot of confused concepts or overly crowded menus. We don't have a regulator on our creativity because we haven't really made a study of what it is that we truly want to do and focus on. And for whom are we doing these things? It isn't for the accolades of those people who don't spend $6, $7 on a specialty latte every day. Those people who follow you on social media because they like your branding, yeah, they might buy your bag of coffee every now and again. But the true customer is the one who goes to your coffee shop every day, who has a subscription to your beans and keeps it for a while. They're somebody who really helps your business grow and thrive. And being a student of those people, that is your industry, not the industry. The industry as in, what does the SCA say? What does this large multinational study say about consumer habits in regard to XYZ? It is interesting information, but it's not necessarily useful information. The industry will tell you that you should be paying attention to these trends on certain flavor syrups, or customers are preferring this type of iced beverage or that type of iced beverage. But you don't know the information behind the scenes of how that data was collected, where it was collected, the habits of that community. All you see is the average or the data in aggregate. And that's why sometimes when you try to apply something that you see in the industry, it doesn't actually translate the right way, because we did not take into account those who were actually going to try to convince that they should buy this thing. No better example, I think, today in the world of coffee is given than the whole idea of co-fermented coffees. I have seen so many times where people have said, customers are demanding these coffees. And in the most rare of occasions, in the most niched down roasteries you could imagine, customers demanding this coffee sounds a bit far-fetched, because you and I know, for the most part, the most frustrating thing a customer does is buy coffee that we don't particularly like. And now all of a sudden we're saying customers are demanding coffees that we also happen to like. Have we become that successful? No, probably not. In my experience and for what I see, customers are still buying lots of medium to dark roast blends, and lots of it. This is something that you see happening in some of the poshest roasteries. They still have these anchor coffees, chocolatey coffees, darker, more developed coffees. But because something is happening in the industry that's like, ooh, that's really new, we're going to put it in our cafe, and we're going to kind of foist this upon our customers as an exercise almost in it's like a teenage rebellion of coffee businesses to say, I'm going to assert myself and my own personality. And in so doing, we all end up looking the same. And sometimes we end up looking kind of stupid because the customer tastes that coffee, that co-fermented coffee that at first tastes like, oh yeah, I can see that fruit is in there. But then it ends up tasting like, yeah, they put milk in it and it tastes like bile, like a little bit of throw up. It tastes like vinegar, and it's weird, and it's, there's a lot of development that needs to happen in co-fermented coffees, and a lot of transparency and a whole nother category of judgment. But the fact that it's gaining ground in cafes has nothing to do with customer demand. It has more to do with our inability to be satisfied with satisfying our customers. We have an ethic that is separate from the thing that actually sustains our business. And on the rare occasions that we do introduce our customers to something that aligns with their tastes, it's not nearly as novel or interesting to us as we'd like it to be. And so out of a sense of entertainment, we like to keep things fresh, not for their sake, but for our own. And that is the kind of thinking that keeps our industry back from relevance and sustainability, and does, I think, affect our sales. And it is a trust issue also, because a customer can tell if you're just drop shipping a lot of ideas that have been harvested from afar into their world without knowledge of them, right? It's like the reverse of, a Steve Buscemi meme with the backwards hat. Like, hey, fellow kids, but it's in reverse. It's contextually jarring. And for the most part, I'd say we have a little bit of maturing to do to learn how not to need the validation of our peers in the industry, and that our menus have certain things on them that are functionally there as a way of maintaining our business, and that we learn how to enjoy those things well as professionals creates a better environment for better care for people, more profit in the hands of people who have a people first mindset means that people get more money. If you are somebody who is making more profit and you are a people first operation, you will reward your people with increased wages and you will have a default to generosity. And the way you become profitable is not by crowdsourcing from outside of your community all of the stuff that you offer to your community. Crowdsourcing from trade shows and competitions and studies, etc., and then putting it in your shop and hoping for the best. Sometimes it does work out, but we need to remove ourselves from this vicious cycle where we're dependent on the industry to tell us whether or not we're doing a good job based on if we look like or talk like, sound like, etc., those who we feel have given us inspiration. Because again, we might feel inspiration, but a lot of the reasons why those things are the way they are in those businesses has to do with their decisions based on their customers. And of course, based on what we're talking about, some of them are just kind of show shops. They're shops that are based on, we're going to do all the latest things in the industry. And those tend to be some of the least interesting places to go for a customer and most interesting as a professional. Sometimes I think those two are mutually exclusive. Talking about the places that are really only consumed with, sourcing the most far-flung, expensive and rare coffees and have no real community roots in them, except they just want to be a showcase for the top 1% of bleeding edge beans there are. Now that is a concept. Okay, that's a thing. You're not going to base an industry on that, because the coffee shop itself as a hospitality entity is not, by and large, a showcase of what is possible with coffee. It is a platform on which, through coffee, we care for people and allow them to also care for each other in community. That is what makes the industry stable, not the rare coffee showcase coffee shops. Again, but there's nothing wrong with that. But let's not pretend like that's the next thing and that's what's going to really get people in the door. That's not usually what gets people, quote unquote, in the door, because most people don't care. They're going to taste the coffee from Denmark or Sweden or, China or Tokyo or whatever. And they're going to be like, okay, great. Now what? I mean, that was really expensive, super expensive, because you had to fly it all the way here. And, a lot of times I think we just make more complexity than we need because we're afraid of settling in to the answers that we already have. You have lots of local roasters near you. Do you need to roast your own coffee? You could become profitable as a coffee shop without roasting your own coffee. If you roast coffee, do you need to source some of these really trendy coffees in order to be considered a specialty coffee roaster of note? Of note to whom exactly? Are you striving to be recognized in magazines and in articles? And, I guess there's a game to play there with marketing, but I don't necessarily think that it is good for the industry to simply try to get notoriety for marketing's sake by sourcing weird coffees or novel coffees, because it skews the numbers and it sends mixed signals to farmers that there is a true demand that they're hoping is coming from the consumer. And I think in good faith, a farmer would consider a trend to be born from a consumer, because that's a lot more stable than a trend born from the industry, because the industry is more fickle. The industry in their echo chamber will change their direction on the drop of a hat. The actual customer is a creature of habit. They want security. They want long-term consistency in their coffee. And try as they might to get it from a coffee shop, the coffee shop feels it's their duty to confound their search for consistency by constantly changing it up and pushing coffee forward. And let's see what we can do, because we are bored, because there's might be some legitimate reasons for some of the things, like the cultivation of specialty Robusta as a response to climate change. And there's ways to integrate those things with an ethic of consistency that will satisfy the customer's desire to buy into something that they don't necessarily have to think about that much, and they don't want to be educated about coffee. most people who want to be educated about coffee are weird people. It's you, it's me, it's the home coffee nerd and all that. But thank goodness most people are not like that, because if they were, we would have such ups and downs and an even more fickle demand from consumers, because there's this ethic of exploration versus consistency and habitual coffee drinking that I think today we're focused on a little bit more. Now we're getting off on a rabbit trail a little bit, but the point here is that we have this inside culture and community in coffee that we call the industry, and it is not in and of itself where we should be living. It is simply a manifestation, or it should be at least, a manifestation of all of the individual choices we're making in good faith to serve first our communities where we are, and that we enter into the pantry of specialty coffee for tools and resources or examples to help us in our quest. We might also find something that actually does fit with what our customers are looking for and fits into something that we're also excited about. And that's fine. But we need to start first with having some idea of what we're looking for before we just wander into the industry and say, hey, tell me what I should do. Tell me whatever it is I need to know about opening a coffee shop and running a coffee shop. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I don't even know why I want to do this. I just want to do it. And basically anything will do. That's terrible in terms of a reason to open a coffee shop. You need to do a little bit more soul searching about this. You need to have some rootedness before you start entering out into the wilds of the industry, because the industry will basically build your bar for you. And it may have all the stuff, it may have the machines and all the trappings of the industry, but it won't have soul. It won't have meaning. It'll maybe even have some level of success, but eventually it'll start to become harder to sustain, and it won't catch on as well as something else will, because people are looking for something a little bit more meaningful these days. And if you can be that cafe that has a balanced perspective on the industry and starts with their cafe first, your community first, and judges all things and filters all things through that, then you're going to win more often than those people who are wringing their hands and scrolling and obsessing about trends and what's this person in California doing that is going to affect my coffee shop in New York and all this stuff. So you versus the industry. So that's the message today. I want you to consider that success has very little to do with what coffee professionals think about what you're doing as a coffee professional. It has a lot to do with the integrity of your business. It has a lot to do with how you care for the people, customers and staff, and yourself in the business. And if you can figure that part out, in the end, your shop will be more successful, and it will in turn create a better and a more stable industry. So that's what I wanted to mention to you all today on this solo episode. Consider it maybe a bit of a longer shift break, but it's really important to me that we consider all of this as focusing on becoming successful from the ground up versus from the industry down. Maybe this is helpful for you to think about as you continue on your journey of coffee. If you're interested in asking me any questions, if you're interested in coaching or consulting for you and your team and your business, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com, and I would love to have a conversation with you. Don't forget to subscribe and share these episodes on social media. Sharing is probably the best thing you can do to support the show, on top of subscribing, of course. And I appreciate every single one of you who have done that and continue to do so. Thanks everyone so much. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.